Hello friends, in this video I'd like to show you the DNA results, the trait predictor results of a 14th century Malaysian sample from this region of the world, from Malaysia. Now look at some additional information about this sample. It's a male, his mitochondrial lineage is B4, his Y-DNA is O2A2. Very interesting. Now, we do remember that the OY lineage is closely related to the NY lineage, which is the most dominant lineage in Finland and Estonia and Siberia and northern Russia. So, it's quite interesting that some of the closest paternal relatives to peoples of Finland and Estonia are here in Malaysia and Southeast Asia with the OY lineage. So that's very interesting. By the way, in this video, I do want to say happy birthday to Logan. Logan is a subscriber of mine who wanted me to say happy birthday to him. It's his 21st birthday, so happy birthday to you, Logan. I wish you all the best as you turn 21, as you step into adulthood, and I wish that you are successful in any endeavor you try, and I wish you that you live a long life with many other birthdays ahead of you. So, back to the sample. Let's see what it scores with Global 25, with G25. It seems to be closest to various populations of Oceania and Southeast Asia. You can see even Hawaiians are close here. Malayans are pretty close here. Indonesians are a little bit further. Cambodians, Vietnamese are a little bit further. Um, as far as I know, populations such as Dusun are populations of Malaysia. Let's look up where Dusun live. Dusun people. Where do they live? North Borneo. Yeah, right. So that's in Malaysia. hmm That's in Malaysia. So the closest populations to this individual are Malaysians. And let's see what they score with my ethnicity calculator, which is a little bit worse. It is not as good as G25, but it's it's what I made. And it's closest to Chinese, followed by Filipino, followed by Korean, followed by Mongol, followed by Jamon, followed by Tibetan. And it's actually getting modeled as a mixture of Chinese plus Filipino. Very interesting admixture model. But that is based on 258 S&Ps, so maybe not the best model. So let's see what it scores for phenotype oracle. But first, I think we should look at Nashakot results. Let's see what it looks like. It seems to score dark brown eyes at 54% likelihood. Doesn't have blue eyes, doesn't have blue eyes with an amber center, doesn't have green eyes, doesn't have brown eyes. It has dark brown eyes at 54% odds. Looks like it has black hair, looks like it's got light brown skin, and looks like it's also got straight or wavy hair. Yeah. Probably doesn't have kinky or curly hair. And for nose shape, what's interesting is it's got a pretty even split between Greek and snub-shaped nose, which is uncommon for East Eurasians with my calculator. Usually they score overwhelmingly snub-shaped nose, like 90% plus. But in this case, this individual is scoring 50.9% for snub-shaped nose. Um, Okay, so no blue eye haplotype 3, no blue eye haplotype 1, so no BH1 is already pretty damning, but um, without light color variance in this variation, um, having any sort of blue eyes or blonde hair is sort of impossible. Okay, he does have two light color variants here in Asip, which leads to lighter pigmentation of skin, which is very interesting. It's sort of a Eurasian light skin variant. It's not something that's unique to Europeans. It's present everywhere in Eurasia. So Europeans, East Asians, even populations of Australia have it. So it's interesting that he's got two light color variants here. He doesn't have any light color variants in this variation of SLC 45A2. Well, this is more of a specific to Europeans type of thing. And he doesn't have any variants here in IRF4, which is not surprising. This is also very specific to Europeans. Um, no ginger variants in MC1R. Very interesting. So overall, this person is pretty dark. Let's look at the phenotype oracle. And with the phenotype oracle, the closest phenotype is this, which does look like a Malaysian phenotype. By the way, in case you don't know where this person is from, this is where he's from. I'm not sure if I've shown this in the video before, but this is where the sample is from. This is where it was discovered. Anyway, so the closest phenotype is this, followed by this, followed by this, which is all of these are East Eurasian phenotypes, but I would say the latter two are more northern, more associated with perhaps China or Japan or Korea. And the closest mixture, actually, very interesting. Hold on. So the closest mixture is just the same phenotype two times, twice. It's this phenotype plus itself is the closest mixture. So it looks like this phenotype is really close to it. It's this distance of 0.534 and this distance of 0.534. This mixture of this phenotype plus itself is really close to the sample in terms of what it is. Looks like this phenotype is just really close to the sample, which is quite interesting. The second closest and the third closest mixture are like northern, are like Amerindian and Turanid phenotypes, which is quite interesting as well. It might be because of the high percentage for Greek-shaped nose. Might be because of that. It might be because of the lighter pigmentation of eye color, relatively light pigmentation of eye color. Because this sample did score like 50% odds for brown eyes. It might be because of that. Um, there is a couple of reasons this might be they might be scoring the Turanid phenotype, but it's pretty interesting that the Turanid phenotype shows up in the oracle at all. So anyway, let's close that. Okay, let's look at the biomarkers results and see what biomarkers this person is predisposed to. Biomarker predispositions. Mouse isn't working. All right. So it looks like he's got higher levels of vitamin D, slightly higher. That's pretty good. Lower levels of LDL cholesterol, that's good. Lower levels of HDL cholesterol, that's kind of bad. But lower levels of LDL is good. And I was under the impression that my tool had a bias to showing lower levels of LDL cholesterol, but I feel like that's because I was primarily analyzing European samples. I think that's why. I think this is the reason why I observed this bias. And higher level of glucose, which is bad, and lower levels of hemoglobin, which is good, and average blood pressure. But blood pressure, I don't really take it too seriously because blood pressure is not something you can um, accurately predict with genetics. You can sort of you can, but it's just very. There's so many factors that go into blood pressure that it's so difficult to predict with genetics. Um, Average level of iron in the blood. So this person does not have hemochromatosis, and average level of sex hormone binding globulin in blood, and average level of red blood cell count in blood, average telomere length, and slightly below average height. So this person is a little bit shorter than average. I'm not sure what the height predisposition of Malaysians are. Malaysians is maybe they may be really tall, they may be really short. You leave that in the comments if you know what height they typically are. But this person is predisposed to be shorter than average. All right, let's close that. Um, okay, now let's look at the polygenic risk scores for this individual. Looks like she's got average odds of kidney stones. Looks like she's got higher odds of arrhythmia and nodosum, and she's got two risk variants for that. No risk variance for hemoglobin E disease, which is very, very interesting because I read online that hemoglobin E disease is most prevalent in Southeast Asia. So, if you'd expect to see risk variance for this anywhere, you'd expect to see it in Malaysians and populations adjacent to Southeast Asia. But no, you don't see any risk variance in this individual, so that's pretty good. Um, Low odds for migraine, average odds of lupus, average odds for gout, average odds for eczema, um, lower odds for exfoliation glaucoma, average odds for every other type of glaucoma, average odds for polycystic ovary syndrome, average odds for cataracts, very high odds for age-related macular degeneration, kind of low odds for rheumatoid arthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis is a very European condition. It's very much linked to European and West Eurasian ancestry. Lower odds of Tourette's, very low odds of epilepsy, average odds of asthma, lower odds of leukemia. Leukemia is also one of those conditions that's very much linked to European ancestry. Average odds of vitiligo, high odds of myopia. Now, myopia is much more common in East Asians, so that's very interesting. High odds of myopia is definitely something you'd expect to see in an East Asian result. High odds of corneal astigmatism, average odds of primary biliary cirrhosis, average odds of stroke, lower odds of male pattern hair loss. Now, I did make, I'm not sure if I made videos on this or if I made any specific videos targeting this topic, but male pattern hair loss, especially with my calculator, you're gonna score much higher for this trait if you're a European or West Eurasian. Like if you're an Arab, Jew, European, North African, you're gonna score much higher for odds of male pattern hair loss than if you are a sub-Saharan African, for example, or a East Asian. Looks like nothing was found for atrial fibrillation. Looks like average odds for deep vein thrombosis, low odds for cardiovascular issues, which is good. Um, Average odds for ADHD, average odds for depression, high odds for bipolar type 1, which is very interesting. And we see this genotype in DRD too. This is the um, genotype that's associated with impulsivity, I think. If you read the SNPDA page for it, it says it's associated with impulsivity and nicotine dependence. But it is also, if you look at the studies that study it, associated with a very high risk for schizophrenia. So this sample does have risk variance in this genotype, in this variation. Excuse me, risk genotype in this variation, and also very high odds for schizophrenia as well. Okay, low odds for type 2 diabetes and average odds for type 1 diabetes, and average odds for Alzheimer's, and low odds for multiple sclerosis. So it looks like this sample does not carry any risk variance for MS in HLA-DRB1. Let's look at the HLA gene panel and see what they score here. Yeah, looks like they score very good. They score lower odds of autoimmune disease. We can check the button and see what genotypes they have here for the HLA gene panel. Oh, they don't have that many genotypes. Wait, let's scroll down. Let's scroll down. Right, so they have a bad genotype in HLA-A, which leads to slightly higher odds of multiple sclerosis, but this does not contribute to the score. Maybe I should make it contribute. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm gonna go and edit it a little bit and make it contribute. I'm not sure. Um, they do not have any risk variance for HLA-B27, which is good. They have a genotype that leads to higher odds of lupus, but it does not contribute to the score. They have a genotype that leads to lower odds of bullous pemphigoid, which is good. It's a good genotype, and they do not have any genotypes for multiple sclerosis, which is really good. So overall, the result is really good. Overall, the result is really good. Okay. They don't have any risk variance for breast cancer. Their odds for prostate cancer are low. Their odds for glioma are low. Their odds for thyroid cancer are low. From this, we can assume that the epithelial cancers panel is going to be low as well. Let's look at it. Yes, epithelial cancers panel, the odds for epithelial cancer is low as well. As you can see, lower odds of epithelial cancers, 51.8%. So predisposition to lower odds of epithelial cancers. Let's look at the genotypes. Mostly really good genotypes. So these two lead to lower odds. These lead to lower odds. These lead to lower odds. This leads to lower odds. So this leads to higher odds of cancer, and this leads to higher odds of cancer. But most of the genotypes leads to lower odds of cancer. It doesn't carry any JAK2 risk variants for polycythemia vera, and he does have the risk haplotype for testicular cancer and kettle G, which is very interesting. I did mention that this is particularly common in Europeans to have the risk haplotype in kettle G for testicular cancer, but it is also very common in all Eurasians. So if you're European, if you are an East Asian, or if you are a um, say a South Asian, the risk variants for testicular cancer and kettle G are all very common in all these populations. So it's essentially everybody who's not a sub-Saharan African or a North African. Now let's look at some of the rare conditions. He does have one risk variant for Crohn's disease, but it's not marked as important, so it's not one of the important risk variants. Crohn's disease is not one of the rare conditions that I look for. Everything after Crohn's disease are rare conditions. So let's look at them. We don't see anything here. We don't see for allergies 9 risk variants out of 14 for allergies. That's very high. So there is a very high predisposition to allergies. And we do see 2 risk variants for familiar hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is very, very interesting. And we also see 1 risk variant for familiar thoracic aortic aneurysm. And that's it. We don't see any other risk variants for any rare conditions. That's it. All right. Now let's go ahead and explore the monogenic traits and see what's there. So it looks like this sample is definitely a warrior, in terms of warrior versus warrior phenotype. This sample is predisposed to warrior phenotype, which means quicker dopamine reuptake, lower dopamine levels, and high stress resilience. Based on these COMT and MUA genotypes, this sample is predisposed to warrior phenotype. The warrior phenotype is much more common in professions such as fighters, cops, soldiers, stuff like that. Now, for D2 receptor sites, this individual is predisposed to higher number of D2 receptor sites, which also is linked to higher odds of schizophrenia and lower affinity to no-go learning. As you can see, the sample is not a no-go learner. This sample, is there a genotype for TOC1? There is no genotype for TOC1, unfortunately. But wait, we see this genotype right here. It was shown in the polygenic risk score page as one of the risk genotypes for schizophrenia and bipolar 1. Do I mention here on this page that it's also linked to nicotine dependence? And I don't mention it. No. But you can do your own research and you can find out about it. But so you can do your own research and you can find out all about these variations if it shows up in your report, right? And this sample also has higher levels of 5-HT and serotonin. This sample shows higher odds of autism. Very, very interesting. And he is a carrier of a risk allele for dwarfism. Look at that. So he carries a risk allele for dwarfism in the FGFR3 gene. That is certainly very, very interesting. Okay. He does have a genotype that leads to an increased risk of gout. I don't remember. What was he scoring for the risk of gout? Let's look. What was he scoring for the risk of gout? He was scoring average for risk of gout. Okay. Now, he is predisposed to intermediate or lower odds of lactose intolerance, and that is because he carries the lactase persistent genotype here in LCT. Now, this is not the variation that is exclusive to Europeans. The MCM6 variants that are exclusive to Europeans are not in this file. If they were, this sample wouldn't score them. And if they were, then this sample's percentage breakdown for lactase persistence would look very, very different. But they aren't in this file, and because of that, looks like only this variation is here, the LCT variation, where this sample does have a genotype that leads to likely being lactase persistent. Well, because of that, they score this. So they are predicted to be lactose persistent, lactose not intolerant, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool. But if the file was higher quality, if the file had the other two variations in MCM6, then the result would look very different. Now, for empathy in OXTR, this file is predisposed to lower level of empathy based on these three variations in OXTR. Once again, you have to be really, you have to be taken into account that not every variation is present in the file, right? The file quality does matter. The file quality is not always 100% quality. The file quality is sometimes lower, lower coverage, smaller file quality. For example, this file is only 20 megabytes. It's not a very high quality file. So, the file quality does matter. And in this case, we see three variations for OXTR. But what could the score look like if there was 5 variations instead of 3? Because there's a total of, I don't even remember how many. I think there's 6 or 7 a total in my trade predictor for OXTR. So what would the score look like if all of them had been present? I don't know, but it would be interesting to see if we had a higher quality version of this file. But we don't, right? We only have this version. So I guess we're gonna have to make do with what we have. Okay, so Alzheimer's, no risk variance for Alzheimer's and APOE. We do not see we see average odds for cardiovascular issues for the cardiovascular issues panel, but we do remember him scoring very low for the odds of cardiovascular issues on the polygenic risk score page. That is because of the homocysteine levels page. So let's scroll back to the very end, and we see, yes, he's scoring very much lower levels of homocysteine. That's very, very interesting. So from that, we can know that his result for the MTHFR gene panel is looking very good. And it looks like he's got decreased levels of plasma homocysteine in the CBS gene panel. And it looks like he's got no risk variance for homocysteinuria in the CBS panel as well. Right. And MTHFR panel, let's look it up. MTHFR. Yeah, looks like he's got good genotypes here as well. So there is no risk variance for elevated homocysteine levels whatsoever in this result. Okay. Now for facial morphology, let's look at that. Looks like he has CC genotype in this variation of EDAR, which leads to some East Asian facial traits, most likely non-European ethnic background. So he does have East Asian genotype in this variation of EDAR, although this is not the V370A variation. That is the main variation that sets Northeast Asians apart from everybody else. This is a different variation in EDR that's also very close to the main one. He has a genotype that leads to lower odds of missing teeth, and he has a genotype that leads to slightly thinner eyebrows. Very cool. Increased cranial size and 2% higher IQ. Impaired muscle performance, likely endurance athlete. This is the ACTN3 genotype that I always cover in my videos when I discuss genotypes of various ancient samples. So he's got impaired muscle performance, likely endurance athlete, rather than strength or power athlete. Unathletic genotype. Likely has photic sneeze reflex, and let's see what else. Risk of heart failure due to beta blocker medications is below average. Pretty good. Pretty good. He's got 17 times increased myopathy risk for statin users. Very, very interesting. Uh, Statins are medications that lower cholesterol. Hmm. He's not a carrier of any of the albinism variations, and he also has a genotype that leads to decreased risk of cleft lip and palate, so he doesn't carry any uncommon variants for phenotype. He doesn't carry any risk variants for familial Mediterranean fever, and we went over that. We went over that. What about leukemia? No, he does not have any genotypes, any risk variants for leukemia. Now, for rare diseases and traits panel, let's see any rare diseases that he might carry. He has a genotype for risk for ankylosing spondylitis, which is very interesting. 4.6 increased risk of ankylosing spondylitis. Um, he has a risk for rheumatoid arthritis, but that's very common. Um, and that's it. He doesn't really have any risk variants for anything. Yeah, he doesn't carry any risk variants for any condition. Okay. Canavan syndrome, no risk variants for that. HIV and AIDS panel, he doesn't have any protective variants from HIV and HLA-C. And MTRR panel, no risk variants for spina bifida and disorders in intracellular colon metabolism. Unfortunately, only one SNP shows up here. Normally, this panel is comprised of like 6 or 7 SNPs. So once again, file quality is an issue. For muscular dystrophy myopathy panel, he's got no risk variants here and no risk variants for ADL. Once again, file quality is an issue. Normally, this panel would be a lot larger. There would be a lot more SNPs showing up. And he's got no risk variants for color blindness in OPN1 LW or MW or SW. He's got a predisposition to lower odds of obesity at 50% odds for lower odds of obesity based on one and based on only 2 SNPs. Wow, that's very low. That's a very low coverage for SNPs for obesity. But based on these 2 SNPs, he's got lower odds of obesity. And for syncope, based on 5 SNPs, he's got lower odds of syncope. And for biotraits panel, he's got dry earwax, no body odor, likely Asian ancestry, and reduced colostrum. So that's a very interesting genotype to have. Genotype that lowers your body odor and leads to having drier earwax. That's totally cool. He's got a genotype for lower odds of motion sickness, longer sleep duration. Let's see what else. No extraordinary tasting ability. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And now we're gonna scroll past all of this. Yeah, we're gonna scroll past all of this. For blood type, his blood type is most likely type O, although type A and type B and even type AB is also quite probable. But most likely his blood type is type O. Let's look at the gene types actually. He has a gene type that leads to most likely blood type A or O, then another gene type that leads to higher odds of blood types besides A, then another gene type that leads to not blood type A or O, then another gene type not blood type B or AB. So yeah, most likely it's some type of blood type A or O. Once again, probably O because of the higher odds of all blood types besides A. So it's probably O, yeah. But it can be difficult to tell with so little, with so few SNPs. It can be difficult to tell exactly what blood type this individual has. It's sort of a mathematical calculation. You need to do some mathematical calculations and formulas and algebra to figure out what exact percentage and chance and probability of blood type distribution is, which is what my shape predictor does. It does the calculation on its own, and the results of this calculation is here. So most likely this individual has blood type O, but A and B and even AB is also quite probable. Unfortunately, we don't know enough based on this file's contents to determine the blood type more precisely. We can just say that most likely it's probably A or O, probably O. Well, thanks for watching. Happy birthday, Logan. And make sure you check out the description of the video, which will have links to buy this file in 23andMe format, as well as the executable for my trade predictor. Also, make sure to leave a like and share the video if you enjoyed it. Goodbye.